I think that an entrepreneur has to use whatever methods they can to generate awareness of their products and their services. In my case, I was fortunate in some respects to have become an object of interest to the media, because back then I was more unique maybe than entrepreneurs at a young age are today, particularly in the technology space as well. So a combination of those two things gave me a lot of column inches, and those column inches built awareness, and that awareness helped drive traffic and potential customers to us. So that was all very good. That was good use of PR. It was a low-cost way to build customers for my business. Pierre Omidyar, the founder of eBay, worked for me in California in the 90s, and he was a few steps below me, so I didn't get the pitch from him. I got it secondhand from his manager, a lady called Libby Trudell, and you know, it sounded interesting, but at the time, putting $1 million into what was described as a flea market on the internet didn't seem like a good use of our limited resources. I think even today it would be a challenging investment to make, but I'd probably be a bit more inventive about how I might get a little bit of equity in somebody's idea and give them maybe some office space and help them a bit. I'm not sure floating your business is necessarily the best route today for an exit. There are a number of ways that a business can capitalize on its growth and its potential, and floating the business on the public markets is one of those. But those markets are now a little bit more challenging with some of the activities of companies that have abused the process. So selling to another company is a good option. Bringing in private equity investors who will take the business to another level is another option. But I think in all cases, these things happen. These things should be considered at the time at which you start a business. You know, what is the likely exit for shareholders? Because ultimately, businesses are all about investment and return. And investment return should be part of the process in considering a business at startup. So when an entrepreneur sits down and says, I think this is a great idea, there has to be an end game. And an end game is that the business will grow and develop and create profits, and that's the end game, to run a profitable business for my family and so on, and for generations. That's an end game. Others may be, if I'm bringing investors in, I have to give them an exit. And to give investors an exit, you have to find some way of buying them out. And that can either come from the business itself, in some circumstances that are quite rare, or you have to bring other investors in to replace them. And other investors tend to be either the public markets, a trade sale, or private equity. No, I had absolutely no idea what I was getting into when I became the CEO of a public company, for two reasons. The first was that I was, at the time, the youngest CEO of a public company ever in the British stock market. So that caused a lot of, and I was 30 years old, so I wasn't exactly, a kid out of school. And I'd been running my business for 10 years. We had offices all over the world, so it wasn't like I was, fresh-faced. But nevertheless, there was a lot of scrutiny and a lot of visibility and a lot of publicity, and I wasn't quite, ready for that onslaught, the ups and downs of that. However, you adapt, and over a period of time, I started to tone down my ties and waistcoats and all the things that cause such offence, and tried to conform for a period of 8 years. And to be honest with you, I found that rather challenging. I think that many entrepreneurs struggle in a public company environment. I think often it's a good time to step back into a chairman role and bring in a new management team or chief executive or something, because I think that's, history has shown that tends to be a better way to handle that sort of transition. I've done many acquisitions both reverse acquisitions and regular acquisitions. A reverse acquisition is when a smaller company buys a bigger company, that's all. And I did one of those. I bought Knight Ridder Information for $460 million in 1997. And I also made other acquisitions, like the acquisition of Boo.com, which was a small acquisition. It wasn't a reverse acquisition, that I did in 2000 when they went bust and we bought their assets and their technology. Acquisitions can be very useful in building market share and a position in the market. They don't have to be big. You can acquire businesses for nothing and just take on the cost of the people or the resources, give those people a future. Or you can be buying a business that generates a lot of sales and profits and so on. Of course, you're going to have to pay a proper price for that. But acquisitions should be used strategically to enhance your position in the market. And so even if you are a hairdresser in Fulham and there's another hairdresser over the road, you could acquire them and absorb their staff as a strategic acquisition to increase your ability to service that market. So, it doesn't have to be, big picture. Failing. The dangers of failing in a turnaround. And when you fail in a turnaround, then you lose money. And when you lose money, that's not the objective. The objective is to make money. So, that's not good. And I think that there's nothing bad about failing in business because they all add to your experience and your ability to become a qualified manager for the next time. And I think that this sort of attitude is beginning to take form here in the UK. It's important because to try and fail is better than not to try at all. And that attitude is very strong in the United States and why you have such an entrepreneurial culture there. And here in the UK, I think that it's beginning to get more like that. And I think it's a tremendous opportunity now in this more challenging market for people to get out there and start something up because what have you got to lose? As much as you can. Due diligence is the ability to understand what you're buying. And in the same way in which you would try to learn as much about a product that you're about to buy, especially an expensive one. If you're buying a car, you want to know everything about it so that you make the right decision. The same is true as when you're buying a business because you're taking on a lot of obligations. And probably the most important obligation you take on when you buy a business is the obligation you have to individuals. You're taking on a responsibility to employ those people. And when you have that sort of responsibility, it's important to make sure you've done your homework. You can't act irresponsibly when it comes to people's lives. There's a number of things that will be required to get the UK to be competitive with the US in terms of its ability to grow businesses of size and so on. And the key factor here is not the talent, skill and ability of British entrepreneurs, which I think is there in abundance. The key here is capital and the propensity for investors to support startups. And that's unfortunately severely lacking and something that we at Brightstation are much more, enthusiastic about supporting. So, I think that's the trigger, and I think it's something that will change. I think it will change because where there's money to be made and where there's opportunity, the money follows that. So, I think that's going to start to change. And we've seen some great successes, particularly in my sort of space with Skype and Last.fm and others that have created real value and have come out of Europe. So I think that it's going to happen, but it just requires capital and support.